Morning, Scorpio. Still in the lakes, and I have climbed up a little bank behind the house. It's not a little bank. Anyway, I found this. It seems quite tall to me. I found this little nook here, and I suspect that there was some sheep poo just near where I'm sitting. So I think this has been a sheep's bedroom before. It's pretty cozy. It's got a little dip. It's almost like an altar because there's a big bit of rock that my calves are lying on at the moment, but behind that we've just got this little sort of bedroom with some rock behind it. And the bracken's all tall in front of me so no one can see foxgloves. It's really nice. Anyway, let's do a Celtic press for you. It's a bit uneven here, but we'll make do. So, Scorpio's internal world, 10 of Wands, and that makes them act how does that make them act in the external world? How does that make Scorpio act in the external world? The Devil. And the basis of this reading, or the situation, Nine of Wands. It's funny, those have been coming up quite a lot together. And I don't know that much about the astrology, but I've been seeing something that is very punchy at the moment. That people have been talking about this period as being kind of potentially a little bit aggressive, strong energies, things needing to be cleared, strange dreams, as if things are trying to be cleared from your subconscious. Lots of the people where I'm staying are having really strong dreams. Something from the recent past. So nice here. So nice here. So nice here. Something from the recent past. The Hierophant. And a potential outcome. Knight of Swords. And something from that's going to happen in the near future. Near future for Scorpio. Justice. Okay. And then your attitude, Scorpio. Seven of Wands. And your environment. Scorpio's environment. Scorpio's environment, please. Scorpio's environment. Page of Pentacles. And your hopes and fears. Five of Pentacles. And an outcome. Seven of Swords. Interesting energy. So, two sevens. Quite wandy, and the wands are in the basis of the situation. And then these two sort of very moral major arcanas that are kind of flanking the devil, which is the way that you're being encouraged, or sorry, there's a tree that's hanging out of this rock. A lot of the rock outcrops here have trees that must have been here for years. There's a lovely bird in it. Anyway, yeah, so what's visually quite arresting is that we've got, let's see if I can hold them up correctly. We've got these two, your internal world, your external world, something from the recent past, something from the recent future, but visually it's kind of these two sort of moral figures sandwiching this very obsessive energy in between it. And the moral figures are symbolising something from the past and something from and something that's going to happen in the near future. I think it could be about this period, with this very, very strong energy of clearing. I wish I knew more about astrology, but I pick up enough to know recent world events are sort of probably something to do with it. I mean, we're talking in the last week or so. I'm filming this in mid-July, recording this in mid-July. There's a sense of something quite explosive and overwhelming needing to be contained. And if it's not explosive, maybe that's inaccurate. Maybe it's just a sort of old, heavy burden that's just getting too much, that needs to be cleared. That's what I'm seeing when I look at this. I'm just going to lay these out a little bit better because it's all falling. I'll just put that over there. No cups in your reading. Only one sword, but then the Justice card. Oh no, sorry. There's 3 swords because there's 2 minors and the Justice. There's 2 swords. Let's say Justice holds a sword. 1, 2, 3 wands, but then that very sort of wandy energy of the devil, and 2 pentacles. So a sort of obsessive. It's about energy. I think it's about your an energetic overload, and because in the basis of the reading we've got the 9 of Wands, and we've also got the 7 of Wands turning up. I feel like it's other people's energy that you're needing to keep at bay. Yeah, I think that's what it is. So let's start anyway, and we'll see what comes out as I start looking more in detail at the cards and seeing what they're saying to me today. Let me put my glasses on. So we have you internally as the 10 of Wands. Looking at the bottom of his foot that he's showing us in this, in the bottom corner here. In some cultures that can be considered quite rude, and he's got his head buried firmly in those wands, almost as heavy the burden is of these wands, and it is. There is a sense in which he's sort of escaping something by kind of burying his head in them. Usually we say he's going to miss, he's going to walk right past this village. But today, I'm wondering, does he really want to be in the village? Because he's leaning into those wands, and he looks a bit destabilised in terms of his stance, but also as if he's hiding from somebody in the village. That's what I'm seeing today. So, is that a case of have you internally been worrying or stressing about something, or have you been thinking about work obsessively rather than dealing with something that's a bit broader in your community, other people's energy that you feel a bit assailed by. I mean, you know that thing of a kind of OCD-ish, kind of neurosis that comes up, like, for instance, I mean, it's not a particularly good example, but whenever I have to pack, I find it so overwhelming that I will sort of micro-focus on one thing I might have lost, and then my brain can't give up on it. And I don't know whether that's an echo from something from when I was much younger, when I was first packing, or whether it's actually just that, you know, you pick one thing to become completely obsessed with in order to represent the general anxiety that packing represents to you. And I guess that's something to do with going away. I mean, I love going away, but there is an anxiety that comes up for me, and I find it quite confusing. It's not quite the right example. Let me just think this through. I mean, workaholism, which is also indicated in the devil, which is crossing you in your external world, is the Ten of Wands as well. You know, when you just cannot get your head out of your work, even though it's kind of overshadowing everything else, you go for it. But there's an emotional reason that people do that, like any addiction. Is to do with screening out other signals that are coming from people around us that we don't like, or we can't metabolize, or are overwhelming to us. And I've been thinking a lot about those kind of dynamics while I've been here, because we've had teenagers and we've got a group of people that's kind of changing a little bit. You know, someone leaves, someone comes, and people need their own space for different reasons. So I've been thinking about it because I can see that my lack of mobility sometimes is giving me a bit of that I can stop a bit, because I can kind of legitimately say I can't be with the crowd all the time. And that was making me think back, so I can only really talk about myself with any proper wisdom, but that was making me think back to, gosh, it's a bit like that at university, and I was a bit like that whenever I was in group situations. And now people might talk about whether you were on the spectrum, that I might well be. Never had any tests. But there's also a sort of strong feeling that it's, and this might be why people on the spectrum, and it is why people on the spectrum need their space, is because they're so aware of what everyone else is feeling. And even a bit more dangerously not aware of exactly what's going on, but just absorbing unresolved feelings. That's the bit that I find quite difficult. So it's easy when you can name it and you can see what's going on for some people, even if it's nothing to do with your dynamic. If you can sort of put it in a box, that's fine. When there are feelings that nobody's kind of able to claim, some people can become a little spongy for those, or become sucked into it somehow. Maybe I can be a bit like that, but I think a lot of people can. And so what you do in those cases is you sort of stare obsessively at a phone, think obsessively about something that you're worried about, read. You kind of want to screen things out a little bit, is what I'm feeling, Scorpio. And that's not always a completely bad thing, because in the external world, you feeling a bit like that, I'm just going to cover their bits, is making you act like the devil. Again, the card of, as I just said, a card of addiction, really. It could be over drinking, over working, over anything, shopping. Today I'm looking at, he's got his hand on something in the corner. What is that he's holding? The devil. The edge of his seat. What is it? It's because I've always thought he looks quite precarious the way he sits. God, it's so difficult I don't know whether this really is an issue, but anyway. Anyway, let's look at it quickly. Look at his little legs. He's perching on a kind of pedestal that is way too small for him. So what is it that he's holding on to at the side that enables him to stabilize? It's got a central column and then lots of little rungs. It's almost spinal. Although it isn't a representation of a spine. It could be like a kind of structure, like an obelisk or something. It's not quite that. Anyway, he's having to grip it to stabilize. So that makes me think that your behavior is slightly to do with stabilizing a situation. Like, I don't want to get swept off. I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about you, Scorpio. You don't want to get swept off into group dynamics or someone else's stuff. And so actually, as a kind of force of will thing, sometimes it's safer to stay with a kind of slightly unconscious addictive behavior. Watching TV, Netflix, eating. Phones is the obvious one. You know, we all know that feeling of having been around a lot of company and needing to just dive into your own space to disconnect a bit. And it's for the purposes of stabilization for you, I think, because it is very, very uncomfortable being a channel effectively for other people's feelings. And we really, really do that. There's a modality called family constellations, which I've only tried once, but I found extraordinary. And you get together in a group. It's a bit like drama therapy of some sort. You're sitting in a circle, and whoever's turn it is sits with a facilitator, and you talk about what one issue from their family specifically they would like to solve. And then, I don't know, there might be 20 people in the room. I mean, I guess you can do it in all different sizes. And then that individual, the facilitator will have heard and metabolized what the situation is they want to work on. And then they ask a few questions, namely about who is not being heard. Who's the black sheep in your family? Who's the person you didn't know about, whose voice wasn't recognized, whose opinion was suppressed? Or did you move from abroad? Did you... there are a few things that are deemed to be quite traumatic, but in a family sense, so you might be now acting them out because somebody didn't have it acknowledged within your background. Anyway, long and the short of it is, you then are maybe picked to represent someone, from a mother to a sister to a long forgotten aunt that nobody talks about, or the black sheep of the family or whatever. And they intuitively pick people, and you really don't know each other, or I didn't know the people in this group. You might have had a quick cup of tea, but you've got no sense of the story. You're just doing this intuitively, who reminds you of an energy of your significant family members. And having been a representative, they call them, in lots and lots of people's family constellations, it's quite extraordinary. Like, bam, you're in a totally different space. Sometimes you feel very cold, sometimes you feel very alive, irritable, withdrawn, shy. I mean, completely different. So it wasn't a representation of what I was feeling that day. It was really, I did appear to be feeling a kind of condensed sense of what that person in their family felt according to this dynamic. So what I'm saying is, if you're picking up feelings that you're barely aware of but are strong and they're not yours somehow, or even if they are in your direct family, but they really aren't yours to solve, I can see why you would become quite addictive. This is a double addictive. This is obsessive on the inside, leading to addictive behavior on the outside. Feeling, and the devil specifically feels very bound to someone or some behavior. And, you know, you could be feeling bound to the person that is having these unowned feelings, or to the group, or you could just feel bound to the behavior that is blocking them out. Those are my instincts. Anyway, let's move further into the reading. So the basis of it is you feeling defensive, battered, in need of, you're looking around, you know it's coming again. You've been in this situation that seems to be repeating somewhat. It's quite a barren landscape, and you appear to be on a kind of weird stage in a way, as if it's a kind of made up scenario, if you know what I mean. Like now he's looking, because of the little story I've been telling, it's as if someone's just plonked him on the stage and he doesn't know his lines. And it's like a game. Can he work out what he's supposed to say and do? And he's feeling really defensive because it's not his play. It's not his lines. He hasn't rehearsed for it. And this feels very exposing, and he feels very under attack. Yeah, it's strangely sterile what he's standing on, isn't it? It's not, even though he's got these lovely wands which are ready to bear leaf, they're not in the right environment. So my boyfriend calls this build a fence card. When I showed it to him, he says, yeah, he's building a fence, which I don't think he is. But if I just sort of play with that, if he was building a fence, he's not really building it in the right place. It's not natural enough for these wands. You're not in your natural habitat. That's what I want to say for you at the moment. Or maybe you're just being pulled out of your own internal habitat, and that feels really irritating because you're not attending to your own stuff. Although your own stuff, ironically, is how one learns to protect from other people's emotions and projections. And in the recent past, the Hierophant, correct moral action within the sort of eyes of society. I'm seeing these little things at the top of the pillars that look a lot like the female reproductive system, ironically. And in fact, the Pope is looking like the Popess today. You know, she looks female to me today. And she's kind of pointing, she's indicating those two pillars. So normally we talk about this card as being really kind of traditional and stiff, but helpful because it can be marriage, it can be, all the kind of distillation of spiritual wisdom through a kind of dogmatic, the dogma of the church, or a system that has kind of, can be a little bit restrictive, but has grown up in order to try and explain you see these two bald heads behind us, trying to distill spiritual wisdom that can be so sort of deep and wide and difficult to get into something that's able to be metabolized. There's a sort of pineal headdress, I always think of this as. But if this is a female pope, and which apparently there were in Italy way back in the day, I don't know, 1500s, I think. I don't know. I need to check that. Then it's interesting. It's almost like in the recent past, there's been a sense of needing to integrate female wisdom, female kind of bodily wisdom into a kind of larger system, into your own or your group's or your family's system of knowledge. I mean, has she snuck in there? Is she slightly kind of preaching apparently the word of, the kind of accepted word, but is she secretly indicating something a little bit more what's the word? A little bit more controversial? Lilies on the back of the clothes of one of the acolytes, roses on the other, I think is what I'm seeing. Lilies a piece, roses, I'm not sure, they're not deep red. They're trying to learn these principles from her. She's got the keys to sort of peace and passion, or beauty in a kind of classical sense, as in harmony. Yeah, and so this is in the recent past. Maybe you've had a revelation that actually you're not going to get a solution to this situation without elevating the female principle. Yeah, that's what I want to say, I think. That, like, elevating with status and the wisdom of the female principle. Is it that there's a very strong masculine energy that's dominating a situation, and that the only way to sneak in a kind of, or redress the balance, is to sort of sneak in this female wisdom? I mean, could it be, when I talked about the family constellations, is there something unowned within a family system, or the system that you find yourself within? You know, you could be at university and it could be just a group in a student digs, in a student accommodation or something. It's whatever, you know, has jumped to your mind at the moment. Is it that there's a very strong, slightly running roughshod over you male principle that needs to be pulled back? Do we need to be and the only way of doing that is to slightly, it's got shades of the Strength card, is to slightly sort of, through the use of authority, kind of sneak in principles of feminine principles. I'm sort of talking about soft nature principles somehow. A potential outcome, reach this card, is the Knight of Swords. It could be a kind of a sense of trying to use your intellect to sort of slash your way out of this, is what I want to say, or to take a punt at changing the situation. That's what I'm seeing today, is that little claw on the back of his, I don't know what you call this, on the back of the spur, on the back of his armour. It's vicious. Who's that aimed at? Not the horse, I hope. But is it, it's interesting. God, I love how this works. Because in the first picture, the sneaky sole of his foot that he's showing made me think that that's rude in some cultures, and it's kind of the first bit of his image that we see at that part of the frame of the picture. And now we're seeing like a hidden weapon on his foot that I've really never noticed before. And so one potential outcome, I think, might be a kind of a sneaky rebellion, or kicking back against this kind of overwhelming energy. We do that. We lash out unconsciously when we feel burdened by other people's stuff, or confused, or it could even be the energy that's being unowned is an aggressive, passive aggressive, or kind of suppressed aggression that has the chance of sort of leaping out, I think, with this Knight of Swords. I think that's what that's about. In the near future, we get the second of these kind of moral, parental, societal, they're not really parental, but they're attempting to kind of rein in all this unconscious energy with the Justice card. So we had Hierophant in the near past, where I feel like there was a sense of sneaking in some feminine nature principles in the guise of actually something quite traditional, and now and dogmatic and churchy. preachy. And now, here in the near future, Justice raising her sword of justice, trying to balance things out. You know, kind of more conscious up front feeling to this, of just trying to, you know, maybe you kind of hold a house meeting, or you try and, you know, mention the situation and try to bring light to it and suggest that it's balanced a little bit. Or you, however, act in a way to try and balance this that is a bit fairer. What am I saying here? I'm seeing that on one side there's more yellow than the other, right at the edges of the card. So it's a little bit skewed. It's funny for a card of balance to not be in total balance, for the frame to be awry somewhat. It might be that it's too difficult to get this adequately balanced out, even with using this kind of energy of Justice, who's kind of got shades of the High Priestess, but she's, again, externally, with authority, trying to face the situation. I mean, it's a mature energy. It's trying to do something about this situation, trying to bring things into balance. And I think because of the public nature of both this and the Hierophant, it's for the greater good. And I think, you know, justice power is powerful, so I think that there will be a sense of you winning some kind of... it might be just a stage in the process, but I think there will be something that gets resolved or evened out. Even if we still see a slight disparity in the kind of balance, it's on its way. Your attitude is the Seven of Wands. Yeah, not surprised. You know, it goes perfectly with him, doesn't it? I mean, they're really on the back foot, these two. And talking about fate, because they've been turning up a lot, look at his shoes. Sock and a shoe. He's sort of not ready for what's this fight, so he sort of leapt onto higher ground. It's a bit like me, actually. I'm right up on these kind of little mini cliffs. He's leapt onto this higher ground, but he hasn't had time really to even dress and put his proper shoes on. So it's interesting, we've got that spur on the back of this one potential outcome, sort of like claw kicking out aggressively. We've got him not quite ready. This is your attitude, not quite not sure-footed, having been what's the word, when you there's an expression for wrong-footed. You've been wrong-footed. That's how you're feeling. You're wrong-footed. You literally don't have the right shoe wear on. And we know that in the first one I was kind of facing that the kind of unconscious kicking back of the rudeness of the sole of someone's foot. You feel wrong-footed and you might lash out, and you certainly need to... you are winning with your attitude, but you are really, really working hard to stay up there. And look at, you know, these 6 wands going for you. It's hard to know which one to concentrate. It's like whack-a-mole or something, you know. It's kind of and you don't and you're on a cliff and you don't have the right footwear on. So it's a very, you know, you're going to be feeling quite assailed, is the truth, and not quite prepared. Your environment is the Page of Pentacles. Maybe that's why I was thinking this might be at university for some of you, or college, or at school. It's one of learning, but it also could just relate to learning for all of you within this system how to balance this. Because this is a very peaceful card in comparison to all the others. And his foot is deeply in a meadow, in a lovely environment. And he's very consistent, very calm, very diligent, this character. He's young, but he's really applying himself to learning. So maybe all the people that you're in the system with are really well-meaning, or conscious or intellectual or engaged somehow in this process, or it could just be at school or university, or as I said, it could just mean that you're really really trying to apply yourself to try and learn how to break this dynamic and not be absorbing stuff that's not yours. And your hopes and fears, yeah, that's interesting. So as a hope and fear, you sort of almost hope to be out of... So, sorry, the Five of Pentacles is a card of being out of your community. So as a hope, you might slightly wish that you were out of your community. There might be part of you that's like, oh my God, I can't cope with this anymore. I need to step back from this group, even if it's just temporarily. But also as a fear, it might be, if I start putting my boundaries in, if I start to refuse to absorb certain bits, do I still fit in? Am I just here because I work within the system because I'm kind of a sponge, and I absorb and I help to harmonize an environment by sopping up some bits that aren't being owned? And so then if I start to create my boundaries, am I going to be chucked out of this church? Is that my fate? And that human beings have a lot of anxiety about that. We all feel it. I'm in my 50s and I feel it. And interestingly, again, two different footwear, a bandage and a shoe, and then the bare feet. It's all about one's footing, one's stability, one's grounding within an environment, and it just doesn't feel very grounded. I'm looking now at the Hierophant, who was in your recent past, as these two very dainty little slippers with the crosses on. It almost feel inappropriately sort of delicate to deal with this situation when we see things like this. I can't really explain it, but it feels as if... And again, the Justice has this one white, unfilled in shoe pointing out. It's interesting, isn't it? And then the Devil that I was mentioning, with his kind of perch, he's not even got purchase. Nobody seems, other than, his yellow shoes are quite stable, but he's not on the right stage. And the Page of Pentacles is quite stable. So that would say to me, being a bit defensive and really applying to learning is probably your most sure-footed position in this scenario. Because, yeah, you don't want to feel wrong-footed again, and, to feel like you're doing the right thing by yourself means that you're out of your community. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, all of us have desperate anxiety, and not everybody, but there is a sense of needing to belong, however big your community is. It's really important that you have a place within it. I was talking to someone here about a book that Johann Hari wrote about depression. I can't remember the name of it, but I went to see him talk about it, and it was so clear to me that the wonderful little examples that he talks about, and they're not little, they're big, throughout the book, on how to deal with depression, nearly always related to being witnessed by your community, being held by your community, having a part of your community. And that doesn't mean being an extrovert who leads your community necessarily. It just means being relevant to the community, however, whatever your role is within it, being held by it. So of course, if you've grown up absorbing everybody's stuff and you're about to assert yourself, it might make you feel quite nervous that this is going to mean, well, maybe I'm no longer useful if I put my boundaries up. Will I still be included? Maybe these people have unconsciously chosen me to be the kind of the background harmonizer. And will they accept me if I refuse that role? I think that your right friends will. But anyway, the potential outcome. We're back on this funny stage that we see on the Nine of Wands, which was the basis. And now we see a card of giving your power away, theft, sneakiness. Now, is this you? Because we can see sort of a few indications, or I've picked up a few indications of sort of passive-aggressive, you know, the aggression of the Knight of Swords in his foot, the showing the rude back sole of the foot, the claws of the devil. Is it that, is it you having to resort to slightly sneaky means in order to redress the energetic balance? You know, have you ridden in as a potential outcome and taken a punt at just stealing back your energy or redressing the balance? I mean, it doesn't feel like a particularly harmonious solution, but it is a solution, and maybe it's the only way that you can work this. Or is this you giving your power away, which I really hope it isn't? I tend to think it might be you, I have to say, because that's the first thing that jumped to my mind. Unless there's one very strong actor in this, and I mean as in a kind of one character within this group that can really wrestle things back and kind of do something almost a little bit magical to steal the energy. We've got that group in the background all fighting, and there's one person that's taking advantage of the kind of mess of feelings and emotions and the turmoil and the tents, which I'm sure are to do with military, but I always see as parties because that's my job normally. Is there one person who can slyly move into this situation and just grab what they need? And are they the one that's causing all the trouble, or is it you taking back your power? It's starting to rain, but I'm going to quickly, before we get caught in a downpour, cap this with some teeny tiny tarot. Also the same, but can we have some clarity on what's going on with that Seven of Swords? Is this a viable solution? So, Knight of Wands, the Five of Cups, the Seven of Pentacles, and Justice again. A Knight of Wands is a kind of a character that's thinking about themselves. I hope that's you, because I think you've been absorbing quite a lot of the rest of everybody else's stuff. This very dark rendition of the Five of Cups. And I want to say that you've been working on being able to turn around and see where those two cups are standing behind the figure. And this brings you the Justice. But specifically, could you explain who is this Seven of Swords before we get too wet? Okay, two cards have jumped out. High Priestess and Page of Swords. Yeah, I think it's you. I think it's you using this feminine principle that we see sneaking in with the papers, and I think you're taking your energy back. And it might not be in the most straightforward way, but it might be the only way that you can achieve it, through strategizing in a kind of young way, not necessarily knowing what you're doing, and then accessing your deep intuition where you really do know what you do. And you know, again, these pillars, look, you know, it's when the feminine principle takes over from these two rather masculine looking cards, these pillars suddenly become about resolving opposites. And I think that's what you're needing to do, and using wisdom. And I think that's what you're finally bringing. You know, the only way out of this, I think, is through a kind of feminine intuition, a kind of slightly less logical process that might lead you to potentially slightly sneakily take your energy back. But is it sneaky if it's been so onerous on you, or is it just that you're taking back what is yours? Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think you're stealing back what is yours. And now we're in our resplendent fur-topped red shoes, tiptoeing rather jauntily, and that seems like a better place to be. Anyway, it's starting to rain. I'm going to have to save the cards and get out of this lovely cheap dell. And thanks, Scorpio. See you soon.